New Branch, how's everybody doing today? Enjoy your extra hour of sleep? Or no? Did you notice it was even there? Or did you kind of like, hey, it's not even? Yeah, I got you. So anyway, welcome. We're glad you're here today. We do want to take just a moment to acknowledge and welcome you guys joining us online and by phone. We have some people that join us outside of these walls, and maybe they slept in today and they're joining us later, and so we welcome you guys. You shouldn't have slept in on Sunday, but that's okay, whatever. And we do pray God will continue to bless you. And some people are joining our live video stream. We do have that, and so we welcome you guys. And then we also have another venue called Talk Shoe. And we are finding that some truck drivers are joining us through that where they can dial in on their phone. Anybody can do it. But if you know any truck drivers, and if you guys are out there listening, please let us know that you're watching. Hook up with us on social media. Newbranch.net is our website, and we'd love to hear from you guys as well. So we just took a minute for that. And if you know any truck drivers, please let them know. Just go to our website, and all the information for how they can listen is great because it's a real niche for people that are traveling on Sundays. So anyway, we're glad you're here today. We are in a series that we started last Sunday about one of the most incredible books in all the Bible. Not that all the books aren't incredible, but this one in particular is one of the most exciting books because it's about what is to come, and no book in the Bible could be more exciting. No book in the Bible would be more controversial and dividing up churches over all kinds of issues in this particular book. Does anybody know what the book is? Revelation. All right, awesome. And it's the study of end times and what's going to happen, and some people are excited about it, some people are scared about it. And we said in order to understand the book of Revelation, we started it last Sunday, and we talked about what we're going to be talking about in this series, and we said you have to understand who wrote it, because it's not that the person that wrote it was writing their own words. They were being dictated to by God, but the flavor kind of comes from the author. And so does anybody remember from last week, if you were here last week, or maybe you just know, who wrote the book of Revelation? Who was it? John. Yeah, and I mentioned that just because John is my favorite of the apostles, because my name is John, and I just love that. So anyway, but no, John is just an incredible person. And so just a little bit of debrief. If you missed any of this, you can go back and listen to last week's message, and I recommend that you do. If you fell asleep last week, go back and listen to last week's message, because it's very, very critical to understand kind of the big picture, and we spent a lot of time kind of unpacking and explaining what it was all about. But I'll just brief you just a minute. John was the youngest of the apostles. So when Jesus was calling his apostles, he called John, and John was probably a young adult or teenager at the time. Can you imagine that? And he left everything he had. He came and he followed Jesus, and he listened to all the teaching of Jesus. And he was there when Jesus died on the cross. He was there when Jesus rose from the dead. He was there. He was the only apostle there with the mother of Jesus that watched Jesus be crucified. And then when Jesus was buried, he was there. When Jesus rose from the dead, he got to celebrate with them about that. And then when Jesus ascended back into heaven, he was there. And on the day of Pentecost, he was there. And he helped start the church. And he was the early church father, and he helped spread the gospel all throughout the world. And by the end of his life, when he was getting up in his 80s and 90s, it became very unpopular in the Roman Empire to be a Christian. It was never really popular to be a Christian. But it became very unpopular at that point because they had a horrible Caesar named Domitian who believed that he was both Lord God and Savior, or at least he wanted people to think that. And so he said, don't worship Jesus, you worship me. And so he killed a lot of the church, including the apostles. And the apostles were all martyred except for John, but he didn't get away without being unscathed. John actually was boiled in a vat of oil. I'm sure this is really horrible for Sunday, but just so you know what happened to him, he was boiled in a vat of oil and exiled to the island of Patmos, and that's where we kind of pick up where the book of Revelation was written. He was there all by himself. Think of an 80-year-old man, skin all in terrible shape, all deformed, living all by yourself, waking up on a Sunday morning, and he wakes up for church, but he realizes, I can't go. I can't be with the assembly. But yet I think he had church by himself out there on the island. And so here he is out there by himself, and who should show up on the island but Jesus himself? And Jesus goes, hey, you know what? I'm going to do church with you today, John. Can you imagine if that happened here today? If the doors open and all of a sudden Jesus just walked in? What would he think about our church service? First off, he would say, I saw who was late. I know who you... No, I'm just playing. All right. Plague, okay? Just so you know. That's what I'm just playing. But you get the idea, Jesus walks through the door and he decides, hey, I'm going to do church with you and I'm going to spice this thing up. It's going to be the most incredible service you've ever had. And so it's kind of like, hey, we have a lot of videos and we do stuff like that, and it's great to be able to do that. But can you imagine, he goes, hey, look, I'm going to show you the greatest IMAX picture of all time. I mean, in surround digital sound. And the name of this movie is going to be The Apocalypse. You are going to get to see how the world ends. You're going to get to see the culmination of all things. How many people would be a little scared, right? You like scary movies? Who likes scary movies? Who hates scary movies, right? You might not like this one, right? I mean, because the stuff in here will scare the daylights, and it will be as if you were there, okay? And so John experiences all this thing all by himself, and when he gets to the end, he says, hey, these are all the things that will happen. Now do your best, write this in your own vernacular, and good luck with that. I hope you can write all this stuff down. And then he says, and I also want you to dictate 7 letters to the 7 churches. It's basically one church meeting in 7 locations, but not, and he says to the churches because he's saying, hey, these letters are addressed to these specific churches, but it conveys to any church in the end times, and that would be us. So if you're a believer in Christ, these are letters to us. It just happens to be, so we have to kind of understand the churches that he wrote to. So if you're into end times, this is going to be a great message for you. Okay? If you're not into end times, it's a great practical lesson for you to learn things from. And we started last week, and like I said, if you missed any of that, please go back and listen because understanding, there's all kinds of pieces from each one of these churches, so you have to kind of understand them. So I want to kind of explain a little bit about the church we're going to talk about today. And if you want to turn with me in your Bible, it's Revelation chapter 2. Some very practical words from Jesus to us through this church, as if it was addressed to us. You know why? Because it is. Revelation chapter 2, if you want to turn with me, and there we go. Oh, nope. Revelation 2 and verse 8, okay? To the angel of the church in Smyrna, write, okay? So I'm going to pause right there. I didn't get very far. This is in your outlines and in your Bibles, or you can just look on the screen if you want. So we'll talk a little bit about this. So each time that he writes a letter, he says, to the angel, okay? So he's talking about, hey, there's an angel in each of these churches, and what that is kind of a spiritual authority, and we'll talk about it. And last week we said, hey, isn't it that God kind of assigns an angel to every church? And wouldn't it be cool if we had one at New Branch? And I think we do. And I said, what would it look like? And we kind of discussed that last week of what would our angel look like. And so I finally went out this week, and we had a vision, and here's what I think our angel, right? That would be our angel, right? I mean, that would fit New Branch to a T. I don't know if you get in trouble for this or... If there is a purgatory, I think if you laugh, you're going, okay? So I just think you're going to be in it with me, and you're going to go, John, it's your fault because that's really sacrilege. Okay, we're going to get that off the screen as fast as we can. Okay, so that's our angel. Now, what does it mean to have an angel? Some people don't know. Can I laugh at that? Okay, it's okay. Sorry, relax. We said our angel would probably be redneck. In Church of Smyrna, they had an angel. In the Church of Ephesus and all the other churches we'll talk about, they all had angels, okay? And what that means is that God assigned a messenger to specifically watch after their spiritual well-being. That's what it means. Now, the angel didn't need instructions. This is for them to know, hey, there's an angel watching over you. Because the battles that we fight are not the battles of this world. They're not against flesh and blood. They're against principalities and powers. They're against dark things in this world. And we have angels that watch over us. And especially as it relates to this church. So let me explain a little bit about where this is. The 7 churches are actually you might have thought they were in Israel. They're not. They're actually in modern-day Turkey. So here's a map of Turkey, if you know where Turkey is in the world. If you don't, Google it. You'll find it. And so you'll kind of know. It is a dark area of the world even today. But Christianity kind of moved from Jerusalem when Titus came and destroyed it. Then Christianity kind of moved, and the churches that were started were 7 large churches here in Turkey. And one of them was the church at Smyrna. And the Church of Smyrna was a very dark place to live. We talked a little bit about that last week, even in Ephesus and the rest of it is. But even today, Turkey is a very dark place. At the time, the city would have been about 100,000 people. And Domitian had started to persecute Christians. So at the time when this letter was written, it was not popular to be a Christian. He was systematically torturing and killing off Christians and saying, you have to worship me as Lord God. And that's basically where this city is. So I just wanted you to see a little bit about where it is. Today, that city is called Izmir. How many people, has anybody ever been to Izmir? Okay. And Charles is a pastor, so he's been there. You've been to all 7 churches. He was there when John wrote this letter. Is that right, Charles? So you got it. One of our early church fathers right here. You can talk to him after. I'm just playing. That's horrible. I just got to watch myself. I'm sorry, Charles. That's awesome. But, that's absolutely awesome. If you get a chance to talk to Charles, he has shared that with me. absolutely awesome to be there. I've did a lot of research on this message series, and being there in those places, because they're not much different today than they were then. And what you'll see is it's a very dark corner of the world. It really is. Not against Christianity. Yet there's a beacon of light in Izmir today. There's a church of God in Izmir today. And I was listening to a message by Mark Driscoll, and he was talking. He got to preach at the Church of Smyrna to the Church of Smyrna. Isn't that awesome? That's just awesome to me. But Izmir is the place, and it's very dark. One of the people that kind of encapsulates what it means to be a Christian in Izmir or in Smyrna was one of the early church fathers, and I'm not talking about Charles, sorry, Charles. Although he does encapsulate all that. But one of the early church fathers, his name was Polycarp, and you may or not have heard of him. If you've done any research of church history, you would have heard of Polycarp. If you're a Catholic, you may have heard of him, Saint Polycarp, okay? And indeed he was. He was a bishop in the church. He had done many things. If you want to see some incredible quotations, look up Polycarp. Polycarp he got mentored directly by the Apostle John, which I just think is absolutely incredible. So he got to spend time with John, and he was a bishop, which meant he oversaw many churches. Now, I don't like to use those terms, you know. I'd like y'all to call me bishop. I said that one time at a funeral home, and they were calling me that, and it was really funny. Not so funny. But I'm not all into titles, but he actually had that title bishop because he oversaw many churches. Absolutely incredible man. You want to see some incredible quotes, look up Polycarp. But Polycarp, here's what happened to Polycarp. When he got to be an old man, he was 86 years old, and they had asked him to do a pilgrimage to Rome. They had asked him to come to Rome and share with Domitian some thoughts about Christianity, because he said, hey, look, I understand. Why don't you come meet with me? Kind of like if the president said, hey, I want to know what's going on over here. You come and meet me in the White House, and I want to hear about your religion, okay? I want to hear about this new religion, Christianity. And he got there, and guess what they did to him? They put him to death. They put him to death. There's a statue made to Domitian, or to Polycarp. And I just want you to what they baited and switched him and said, hey, you come and tell me about it. But instead, they burned him at the stake. And right before he went to the stake, here's what he said. He said, for 86 years, I have served Christ, and he has done me no wrong. How can I blaspheme my king who saved me? I don't know if you know what that means. Domitian was saying, hey, you worship me as Lord God and Savior, you can go home. And he stood there by the stake and he said this. This is an absolute amazing martyr for the cause of Christ, Polycarp. And he did this at 86 years old. He could have made all the excuses. He could have said how bad it was, but he suffered. And I want you to see that, because the Church of Smyrna, if there's anything about it, it's a church of suffering. And Jesus has some words to you today if you're suffering. But Polycarp absolutely embodied what it meant to be one of them. I'll share with you a little bit about what it's like there today, just to give you some stats. I got this from Mark Driscoll, so hopefully it's accurate. In the country of Italy, or the country of Turkey, there is about 74 million people, and out of those 74 million people, there's about 3,500 Christians. Does that give you an idea of how dark it is? How that a place that had so many of the early churches there, only 3,500 people. Now you know how many people we have in Isle of Wight County? 100,000 about. How many churches do we got in Isle of Wight County? You know how many people are in Hampton Roads? There's not 74 million people in Hampton Roads, I can tell you that. But let me tell you something. In Hampton Roads, look down the way. As dark as it is here, think about that for a minute. How many churches do we have in Hampton Roads? How many people name the name of Christ in Hampton Roads? 3,500 in the country of Turkey. In the city of Izmir, there is 4 million people, is what they tell me. And there's a couple hundred Christians. Can I put that in perspective for you? Out of 4 million people in a city, there is a couple hundred Christians, 2 churches, okay? One of them being, both of them, are the church at Smyrna. And let me tell you something. They have a couple hundred Christians. To put that in perspective, we have more Christians in New Branch Community Church. Now, you might not see it today because people come at different times and different services, but we have more people that profess Christ here at New Branch Community Church than they do in the entire city of Izmir. Does that put it in perspective? Dark place. Just wanted to give you some perspective. Verse 8, here's what he says. These are the words of him who is the first and the last, who died and came to life again. These are the words of Christ, is what he's saying. And it's very important as we look at what we're going to talk about today that you understand what he's kind of saying here. He's identifying himself, and he said, hey, I am God. I was the first, and I will be the last. But understand that I died, but I also rose from the dead. This is very important, that he suffered, and he wants us to know that. Verse 9, I know your afflictions. I want you to underline just a couple things for me this morning. And then we'll kind of unpack them, okay? Underline, I know, okay? And then I want you to circle a couple words. Afflictions, okay? And your poverty. Circle that word poverty. Yet you are rich, and I know about the slander. Circle that word slander. Of those who say they are Jews and are not. But are of the synagogue of Satan. So he's saying, hey, I know there's those people there that claim to be Jews, that claim to be serving God, yet they're really not. They're of the synagogue of Satan. And you know what they're doing to you? They're slandering you. That's what's going on in there. Do not be afraid. Can you underline that? Of what you are about to suffer, if you'd circle that for me. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you. And you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the what? Even to the point of death. You want to circle death? Probably don't, but circle death. And I will give you life as your victor's crown. Verse 11. Whoever has ears, underline that. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who is victorious will not be hurt at all by the second death. Okay. So you got a couple of things we're looking at here today. And I want to kind of explain, because at first glance you're kind of going, I'm not sure if I understand this. So here's what he's kind of saying to the church at Smyrna. Understand that Smyrna was the church that was persecuted the most. They had watched more of their friends die for the cause of Christ. I mean, Polycarp just embodied what it meant to be in the Church of Smyrna, suffering for the cause. And you might be going, I don't know, how do I relate to that? That just sounds kind of depressing. But here's what I want to tell you. If you've suffered here today, and I won't ask you to raise your hand, but is there anybody that's suffering? Is there anybody that's went through difficult times? If you haven't, then it's probably worth writing down some of the things we're going to talk about here today, because let me tell you something. If you're young and you haven't suffered that stuff, and I don't want to talk about suffering, that's okay. But when it happens to you, you tell me, older adults, right? Or maybe not even older adults, but people that have experienced this. When it happens to you, you're going to be totally disillusioned. Is that right? And you're going to wonder, how could this happen? How could life be like this? And so today we want to kind of talk about what Jesus had for the church at Smyrna. What do I do when I suffer? And the first thing I want you to understand about it is this, is that Jesus did not have any critical words for the church at Smyrna. You know why? Because I'm sure they had stuff that was wrong there. But people that are suffering don't need criticism. Is that right? People that are pushed down don't need somebody coming alongside and slapping them down. They already feel like God's against them. And Jesus is coming to them to encourage them and saying, hey, let me encourage you in your suffering. And let me put some perspective, because if you're not careful, this will go to a place that you don't want it to go. So I'll explain that. But I want you to know what Jesus is trying to say is this. Kind of the fine print of following Jesus. This, you know, when Jesus was on earth and he was doing his earthly ministry, you know what it was? It was very popular to follow Jesus. You know why? Because Jesus was doing miracles and people were following him around. But as Christianity went on, it became harder and harder. And when Jesus went to the cross, guess how many people were there? Right? Nobody. Right? Nobody's there during the suffering. It's the same thing in your life. And you could very easily take that as going, I thought Christianity meant my life was going to be better, and it is. But it doesn't mean we won't suffer. And so we have to have a proper perspective, or else very easily you could misunderstand. And you could actually miss the greatest blessing of your entire life. So if you are suffering, this message is for you today. If you're not suffering, write it down, because one day you might need this. Maybe I should say it different. One day you will need this, okay? If you follow Jesus. Now let me explain the difference. Salvation is free. When you come to faith in Jesus Christ, it's an amazing thing where Jesus died on the cross for your sins and he restores a relationship with God. It costs you nothing, okay? Can I tell you something? Following Christ will cost you. Eventually, following Jesus Christ is going to cost you. And if you didn't know that, then you could be very disillusioned by Christianity. And there's this thought that goes, no, it's health and wealth. It's my life will be better. It will be easier. My life will be easier if I follow Jesus. There won't be suffering. And that's simply a lie straight from the pit of hell. Okay? So just want you to know that. Don't think that's not true. Okay? So if you're going to follow Jesus, what we see in this letter, and you can go back and read it for yourself, he said, I am the first and I am the last, and I suffered and I died. You know what? You can expect the same. You can expect, if you follow Jesus, to endure what Jesus endured. That's what you can expect. If you're going to be his follower, you're going to be like him. You're going to be a disciple of his. He said, they hated me, they're going to hate you. Man, this doesn't sound very popular to be, right? Doesn't, right? Let me tell you some of the things you're going to endure. It says it right here in this letter, but oftentimes as a church, we don't like to talk about the fine print, okay? But today we need to, because if not, the problem is some of you guys are going through this and you have no idea what to do with it, and today we want to help you with it. But before we can go there, we have to kind of tell you the things that you might suffer, okay? The first one is this: there will be tribulation. Now, if you read in the book of Revelation, when they use the word tribulation, you just read ahead if you haven't seen anything. You're like, what does that mean? Okay, every bit, like if you watch The Walking Dead. If you don't watch The Walking Dead, please don't watch that. But, or Fear the Walking Dead or whatever. That's what it looks like at the end of time. That's tribulation. You get the idea? That's tribulation. And you see that, the great tribulation. But let me tell you something about tribulation. He goes, hey, whether it's the great tribulation or not, all politics are local. Does that make sense to everybody? You want to know why? Because it may not be the great tribulation, but if I'm going through it, that's all that matters. Let me put it a little different. If I'm on the Titanic and it's sinking, it doesn't matter if every ship in the world is sinking or not. Mine is, and that's all that really matters to me at the moment. You get the picture? And so he's saying, you will have trouble. In fact, Jesus says that in the book of John. Imagine that. Imagine John, the very one that wrote this, understands because he wrote in the book of John, he said? Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. But oftentimes Christians skip over to the next part. But take heart, for I've overcome. But they kind of forget, there will be tribulation. Jesus can overcome it, but understand this, there will be tribulation, and that's just a fact of the matter. Okay, so that's number one. You can write that down if you want to. Number two, there will be poverty. See, Christianity will cost you. It cost them in Izmir. It cost them in Izmir today. It could cost you in Izmir. It could cost you your job. Can I tell you something about Christianity? It could cost you if you follow your beliefs. Did you know that? If you live out your beliefs, it could cost you. In other words, it could cost you money. People might not look at you the same. Some people might say, hey, you know what? That's against the rules. That's against our government. That's against things. And eventually, it may cost you your job. Now, how you go about doing it. Now, some people understand. I want to make sure we're not misunderstanding here. Some people are saying, I'm suffering for the cause, but the truth is they're suffering because of things that they've done, okay? So, and when we look at this area of poverty, well, I'm poverty for Christ. No, you're poverty because you're not following good principles, okay? And Dave Ramsey will teach us, and we've taught that if you follow the principles God has, he'll multiply your money. That's not a lie. But there are times that when you follow God, you can practice all the right principles, okay? And you know what happens? You could lose money following God. And if you're not ready for this, you know what happens? You'll get there and you'll go, but I thought you were going to multiply my money. I thought that I wasn't going to have to suffer. I thought if I had enough faith, I would have more and I could name it and claim it or gab it and grab it. You get it? But right here, he says that's not true. Right here, Jesus is dictating the letter to John to say, I see and I know your poverty for me. This is very important. So you can expect to endure it. There will be poverty. Number three. This is the hardest one. You can give me tribulation. You can give me poverty. But you do this one, you're going to have a problem. You will be slandered. If you follow Christ, you can expect people to misunderstand you. You can expect people to take your words out of context. You can expect people to come against you and say terrible things and ruin your reputation for following Jesus. Now, again, I just want to say, some people, it's not that they're rejecting Jesus, they're just rejecting you because your message, okay? I mean, your message, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it, and people are just rejecting you because it's a terrible way we say it. So we do need to pay attention to that. But understand, sometimes we might have the most tact. We might be trying to be doing the right thing, and yet it comes against us in that moment, and we're going, I can't believe they said that about me. Anybody ever had that happen? I can't believe that I'm trying to follow God and now these things are coming against me. But if you want to be a follower of Jesus, you got to endure what Jesus endured. That's what he's saying here in the thing. Anybody excited yet? Anybody want to follow? Yeah, sign me up for that. I want to sing some more. Bring us another song about how much great it is to follow. Okay, number 4. There will be suffering. You understand, I'm not taking words. These are not my words I just came up with. These are words I circled in the text. He's looking at the Church of Smyrna and he says, I know that you have tribulation. I know you have poverty. I know you have slander. I know that you're suffering. That's big. You're going to have problems. You're going to suffer for the cause. In fact, he goes on, number 5. It could mean your life. It could include death. And let me tell you something. In Izmir, even today, in Smyrna, even today, it cost you your life. Now, I explain some of the graphic violence that happened there, not because I just enjoy talking about it, because I don't. I told you that only because I want you to know it doesn't mean just, hey, I died in my sleep. It means you could be tortured and killed for serving God. Well, I'm sorry, John. This is not the message that I needed today, right? I mean, thanks for that message of encouragement. Thank you very much. God bless you. All right. So what do we do with that? Here's what I want to tell you. I wanted you to know so you would know this is what you can expect. So what do you do with that? Right? Just suffer and that's horrible? I don't think I want to sign up for that. I don't think I want to listen to that. I'd rather listen to the person that says we can have better. But the problem is that when it doesn't work out, some of us are going, but I thought I followed Jesus and it's not working out right for me. So I want to give you a little bit of perspective with the time we have left, because Jesus said one thing here that I want us to pick up on. Just one piece that Jesus said that's so important as it comes to following him and what might turn your world upside down as it has mine. And it's this word right here. He says, do not be afraid. Did you see that? Jesus said this in the thing, and I asked you to underline that and circle it or whatever and circle that, and I want you to see it. You know how many times he says this in the Bible? I don't know. I mean, so many times I have no idea. But constantly, from the very time of his conception where they come, he says every single time, do not be afraid. That sounds like a command to me. How do we do that? Anybody afraid? Yeah. Anybody see the things? Let me give you that list again. Anybody scared of that list? Right? And that's a natural response to this list. I don't like tribulation. You see, and the problem is that the people that fear, okay, let me explain something about do not fear. Let me tell you who he's talking to. He's talking to the church at Smyrna, okay? Now, this is important because let me tell you something. As you're young, this works, right? Parents understand this. When you're young, you really don't think about things that are scary, right? I was just talking to somebody this morning who said they want to get married. That's great. I won't say who it is, but anyway, they were talking about that. And they're like, it's kind of like you. And I'm like, yeah, but as you get older, you start to go, oh, wait a minute, that's what I did. But let me tell you something. There's some things that are not about being married. I've never regretted the decision to marry Marie in my entire life. But let me tell you something. There's some scary things in life, right? And you're like, ooh. Let me tell you something. When you have little kids, right, they'll run out in the street, won't they? If you let them, they'd play on these train tracks. But as an adult, you know why you don't do that? Because you've seen what a train can do, right? And we're going, I got to get you off of there. And there's fear inside for that. Right here on 460, when we let the kids play out front, it's always a fear because you've seen a kid hit by a car. You know what that can do. And you're like, oh, but the kid doesn't, right? They're just, right? And that's what it's like for young Christians. That's what it's like for people that's never suffered. They're going, I'm out there running, and I'm not afraid at all. Yeah, you're not afraid because you're stupid. You know what I mean? But let me tell you something about the church at Smyrna, because if you don't recognize this, you won't understand what Jesus is talking about, and you'll go, that's nice, but you don't know what I'm going through today. And Jesus is saying, I'm talking to the church that suffered most in this world. I'm talking to a city of 4 million that only has a couple hundred Christians because they kill them off. You get it? They're not here not because they don't want to follow, because if they say they claim the name of Christ, they'll cut your head off, quite literally. Get the picture? And he's saying, here's what I'm saying to you today. Do not be afraid. Because what fear will produce in you will rob you of what God has for you. And if we don't dispel of this myth, if we don't go here, then some of you are trapped because you're going, I'm suffering. And I'm saying, but Jesus is saying that's normal. But he's going to give you a perspective today that will change your life if you'll let it. And it's do not be afraid. Now, how do you do that? That's what I want to talk about. How do you do that? Let me tell you what it's not, and then let me tell you what it is. And then I hope God will transform your life. You ready? Do not be afraid. Here you go. Jesus' message was not this. Don't be afraid because I won't let bad things happen. Okay? That's right. Now, I know some people are going to have to take some angst with it. I understand there's total doctrines being written about this that say that's not true. But let me tell you something. They must not have read the 7 churches, right? They must not have read the letter to the Church of Smyrna that said, I know that you're suffering these things. And so many people are coming to me going, how many people, even if you don't come to me, you're going to God and you're going, God, how could you let this happen? Do you not know this is going on? Anybody saying that? I've said it. All right. And he's saying to them, I heard your prayer. I heard your cries. And I know exactly where you are. And that's where I need you. I need you to suffer tribulation. I need you to suffer poverty. I need you to suffer slander. I need you to suffer. I need you to die. Wait a minute. What? Wait a minute. And this is going to blow some people's paradigms way out of the water because there's this whole concept of I'll claim it in the name of Christ and only good things can happen to me. If I don't let it in, then nothing bad will happen to me. Can I tell you something? According to this, that's a lie. Jesus never said that. He never said, if you follow me, bad things won't happen to you. That's not what he said. He didn't say, if you follow me, your life is going to be better in this life. He didn't say that. Now, there's all kinds of blessings God gives, an earnest deposit. But let me tell you something. The death rate's 1 per person. You'll all make it. You get the picture? In this world, there will be trouble. If you don't hear that, then you'll be disillusioned. In this world, there will be tribulation. In this world, there will be poverty. That means you can't name and claim yourself out of that. You get the picture? So let me tell you what happens. If we can't go with the delusion that if I follow Jesus, nothing bad will happen to me, then we get mad. Is that right? You know why we get mad? You know why we believe the delusion? Because we're scared to death of suffering. Is that true? I believe it because I'm there too. I'm scared. I don't want those things in my life. I don't want those things in my family's life. I don't know if I want to pay that kind of price to follow Jesus. You get it? And Jesus is coming along and saying, no, I want you to understand. Because if you miss this, then you're going to miss everything. But the point is here's what I see happen when the fear gets inside. It manifests itself in different ways. And let me tell you how it manifests itself. If I can't believe the delusion that you'll take all my problems away and I can't believe that, then let me tell you what I'll do. I'll get mad. That's what a man does, right? Can I tell you how I know that? That's not theory, okay? And I see it all throughout Christendom right now, that the church in America's voice, can I tell you what it is? It's angry. Now, we have lots to be angry about. I get it. But we're standing up for our rights, and if we don't stand up for our rights, then they're going to get taken away. And you know what? I believe that to a point. I do. And I think we should be politically active. I think we should vote. I think we should dispense the truth. I think we should be out there and be the forefront of it. I think the church should be the place where the world comes for ideas because we have the best ideas, or we should. But instead, we're too busy going, wait a minute, I might have to suffer for the cause. And so what it does is it makes me mad. And let me tell you, when somebody says something about me, I can deal with the poverty, I can deal with some of the other stuff, but let me tell you what I can't deal with. Slander. You said something about me, and I want to get it straight right now, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a rant on Facebook. Get it? Not picking on you, okay? I do the same, okay? I've done it too. But let me tell you something. Let me tell you what that tells me. You know what that is? Fear. Now, you're going to say, as a man, you're going, I'm not afraid. I'm just standing up because I'm an American Christian, and I have every right to open up my mouth. Well, let me tell you something about opening up your mouth because I've been thinking about mine. When Jesus was going to the cross, they said all kinds of crazy things about him. Did you know that? And Caesar looked at him and said, I have the ability to give you your life or to take it away. What do you have to say? And it says he opened. You want to say it? He opened not his mouth. There's a time when Christians just need to shut up. You get it? There's a time when it's okay to be misrepresented because it's not about our rights. It's about the mission that God has given us. And too long have we been ruled by our fear. And you see, the problem is the reason why we rant. Can I tell you what that's about? We're afraid. whether you want to admit it or not. I'm not going to get what I need. Now, it's not all about the church. I'm scared that they're going to take away my rights, and you know what's going to happen then? I may have to suffer. Can I tell you something? When did you think that we weren't going to have that happen? Because following Christ from the very first of the churches, the Church of Smyrna, he said, you want me to go back to the list? You can expect tribulation. You can expect poverty. You can expect the worst one for me, slander. Somebody's going to say something about me, and it's not going to get right, and you're going to have to deal with this. So how in the world do you deal with it then? If it's not about making my life better, then let me ask you a question. Why am I following Jesus? Because of what he told them in Smyrna. There's something better than all of this stuff, and some of us are stuck in suffering and don't have the context, and so we're either doing this, we're delusional going, I must not have enough faith, and so now we're just down on ourselves because we think God's just going to deliver us from everything, and that's just simply not true. Or we get angry. Fight and flight and then fight. Get the idea? And then angry at God and disillusioned. What's the answer? The answer is this. Jesus' message was not bad things won't happen. Jesus' message was this. Don't be afraid because I am with you. It's not that bad things won't happen, but you don't have to be afraid, not because bad things won't happen, but because when they happen, I will be with you. Now, I've said that before, and you know what I saw? I saw a lot of blank stares. I saw some people going, yeah, that sounds really religious-y. Thank you for that word. That don't mean nothing to me. And then I had to think about it, and I was getting so mad. I was like, but that makes sense. But I got it. Maybe you didn't get it. Maybe you don't know what it means for Jesus to be with you. Why does that not make me afraid? Let me explain first. Jesus explained that all this stuff would happen. Don't just think that I'm taking one obscure passage in the book of Revelation and making a case for it. This is all throughout Scripture. If you look up Matthew, I believe it's Matthew chapter 10, you can read for yourself what Jesus said to his apostles. He said, I don't want you to be confused about where this is going. You see, when I leave to follow me, I'm going to go to the cross, and then you will. You see? You will be tried. You guys will go out and share the gospel, and when you do, you know what they're going to do to you? They're going to imprison you. You know what they're going to do to you? They're going to take everything you have. You know what they're going to do to you? They're going to beat you and flog you and take your wealth, and you will be hated just as I was hated. They'll say negative things about you. You read it, Matthew chapter 10. And he goes on this tirade, and then at the end of it, he says, and not only that, but it'll be to the point of death. They'll kill you. I'm sorry, who wants to follow you now? You know what I mean? It was fun following you when you're healing people. It's not fun following you now until he says, but you know, when you're there, guess what? I will be with you. I will be with you. You see, and then he takes the edge off. He says, I see you guys are worried about a lot of things. I see you don't really understand what I'm saying here. You see, let me take some of the edge off. You know what? Even if you don't follow me, you're going to suffer. Is that right? Can I tell you again? People that aren't saved get sick. People that are saved get sick. All right? You're going to suffer one way or the other. And you know what? Everybody's going to lose this life. So as long as you try to hold on to it, this is a phrase that he says. You ever heard this phrase and maybe didn't understand it? He said, you're trying to hold on to this life, and the problem is you're going to lose this life. And that's what he says to him. He goes, you know, anybody that tries to keep their life will lose it. But if you lose your life for me on purpose, with a purpose, then you will gain your life. It means that your life will go beyond this world. And he goes on to say in Matthew 10, I believe it's verse 28, he says this. He says, why are you afraid of the one that can kill the body? Why do you fear the one that can kill your body? You should be afraid of the one that can kill both the body and the soul in death. Now, picture it here, because what he's saying in this verse at the very end, you remember what he said? He said, you won't experience the second death. That's why you're not afraid. Don't be afraid. I've already done that. You are found in the victorious one. You see, you're not victorious. Jesus is. But when you're found in him, you will get the crown of glory. When you're found in Jesus, you don't have to worry about that stuff anymore because you're going to lose this life. So don't be worried about your suffering. We're all going to suffer. All this world is going to go away. But you got a better promise than all of that because Jesus Christ himself will be with you. Now, I want to make sure you understand what this means, because if you're not careful, you won't have this to cling to in your hard times. And you'll be thinking, I hear what you're saying, but I'm suffering. I don't know what to do with this. So let me tell you what you do. you got to understand what it means that God is with you. So we'll go all the way back to the book of Genesis, and we see in the Garden of Eden, if you look in the book of Genesis, you know what it says? It says that God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him man, and he breathed into his nostrils the breath of living. He breathed into him a living soul, and the man became a living soul, right? And he had relationship with God, and you find man walking in the Garden of Eden with God in this pristine environment, and it says what? It says that God was with him. Get it? And then when man fell into the state of sin, right, then it separated him from God. Now God's not with him. Get the picture? That's the scariest place in the world to be. And that decision will be codified for all of eternity, separation from God. You know what that means? Hell. Get the picture? Now that can mean for all eternity, but it can also mean for this life, because Jesus uses the phrase the gates of hell, which means Satan's system that people are trapped behind, that separates them from God, separates them from love, separates them from joy. You get the picture? And God says, you know what I'll do? I'll send my one and only Son to die on the cross for the sins of the world. And when Jesus came, you know what it says? The prophets predicted that he would come, and they will call his Son Emmanuel. You know the word? Which means God with us. Get the picture? You are separated from God, and Jesus comes and dies on the cross a sinless death to restore a relationship with you, that now God can be with us. We would fast forward all the way to the end of the book of Revelation. You know what it says in Revelation 21? It says this in Revelation 21. I love that. That's my favorite passage. It says that there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. This is what happens at the end. And I saw a holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven. You get the picture? Everybody loves this passage. We read them at funerals, and that's why a lot of people don't even believe it. It's like, oh, that's just fairy tale stuff. No, it isn't. It's a promise to us. And then it says this, and it says, it will wipe away every tear from our eyes, so there's no more crying or death or pain, for the old order is past, and now him who sits on the throne, and he says this, that God himself will be with them. See, paradise lost becomes paradise restored with the resurrected Christ in our midst. It's better than even when we started, because now we know how much God loves us. You get it? That's the culmination of all things. But you don't have to wait for the culmination of all things, you see. You're waiting on heaven at the end of time, but you're not seeing what God is telling us here is he's saying, hey, wait a minute, what did Jesus say to his apostles? John was there, okay? Matthew chapter 28, if you want a great passage of Scripture. Matthew chapter 28, he's about to ascend into heaven. And he's leaving his apostles, and he says, I'm going to send the Comforter. How many people think you're a little bit, what? You're on an emotional roller coaster. Jesus dies, and they're all like, I didn't understand what that meant. Now Jesus rises from the dead, and they're like, oh, that's cool, that's awesome. Now he's back with us, and now he says, I'm going to go away. What? But if I go away, I'll bring you to myself, that where I am, there you'll be also, but I need you to stay here for a little while. You know why? Because there's people that don't know me. And he says this, he goes, go into all the world. Maybe you know this is the mission for the church. If you don't know this, you're not part of the church because you don't understand what the church is all about. See? Church ain't about a building, it ain't about a procedure. It's about a people left here on earth in this horrible world. You don't believe that, then type on some pictures of Izmir and you tell me if it's not an evil world. In this evil, awful place, he leaves us here to win the lost. And he says, go into all the world and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them everything I have commanded you. One last piece. And lo, I am with you always, to the very end of the age. Now, what happens at the end of the age? That's kind of scary, right? No, at the end of the age, then it's a new heaven and new earth, and God himself will be with them. You will never, ever, ever be without him. That's what it means for God to be with you. It's better. You see, the problem is we want what's temporary, and we want to say, hey, I'm suffering in this world. And Jesus is saying, yeah, there's suffering, but it's suffering with a purpose that I have. Now, I'm not going to tell you what God's purpose is for your suffering, only to say this: God will never waste a hurt. God has a plan for it, and when you suffer correctly, he can use it in a mighty way. But the plan for you, and the reason you don't have to be as scared is this, is that God is with you, not just over here, but right now, you see? You see, Jesus says, he says, I will build my church. This is interesting. I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. You know the verse? We don't think much about it. Oh, that's kind of cool language. No, it isn't. What it means is this, is there's people on the other side of the gates of hell, and I will be with them, and I will kick down the gates of hell and come and be with you, and you're no longer alone. Get the picture? And that's what he wants to do for you. And so when you suffer and you go, well, God, I'm going through tribulation. God, I'm going through poverty, and it's not my fault. Or it is my fault. He's going, I want to be with you. And if God is with you, thank you. You get the picture? Doesn't matter. See, it doesn't matter because don't matter how big the tribulation, Jesus is with me. What's worth more than Jesus? Jesus is with me. See, how much money is enough to not be with Jesus? None, right? So who cares how much money I have or don't have or whatever? You can take all my money. You get the picture? But give me Jesus, right? You can slander me all you want. You can misrepresent me. Now, let me tell you something. The elders can hold me in check on this one, especially at least one of them. Don't slander me, because I'm coming after you. You get it? You know when you can let it go? And you realize, it's okay you misunderstood me. It's okay you misrepresented me. It's okay that you slandered me. You know what? But give me Jesus instead. All right? It's okay that you suffer. It's okay that I die because you know what? I want to be with the one that has both the body and the soul because I won't die in the second death. This life isn't worth as much as I thought. And I can give you all that stuff and I don't have to be afraid. Do not be afraid, not because bad things won't happen, because Jesus is with you and that's worth more than anything. I'll give you one more scripture to take with you today. You can write this one down. 1 John 4:18. I like it because John wrote it. Okay? John wrote this. It goes right along with the same thought that he's writing to the Church of Smyrna. And he says this, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. I want you to let that wash over you today. The opposite of love is not hate. You know what it is? It's fear. You know what hate is all about? Fear. You know what our rants are all about? Fear. You know what our anger is all about? It's fear. And Jesus is saying, you can either have your fear or you can have me, but you can't have both. And he's not saying that to be mean. It's not a judgmental statement. It's not something to push you down. But if you're going through suffering today, he's saying, I am there with you. And as soon as you realize that Christ himself will go with you through it, it will drive out your fear and you will live in complete victory is what he's saying. And can I tell you something? That's not just for the day to come. That's not just in the hope of the day of resurrection, although we got a great hope in that. It's for today. Because he says in Ephesians chapter 1, he says the same power that it took to raise Christ from the dead is available to us. Ephesians 1:8 says that. That the resurrection power that it took to raise Christ from the dead is now available to you to live your life. And he will be with you. If you're suffering today, maybe you needed to hear that. For some of us Christians, we need to suffer a little bit better, don't we? You know we're not suffering better? Because we're scared. I'm not mad at you. Can I tell you something? You're going through this, God's not got any condemnation for you. You writing those rants, he doesn't have any condemnation for you. You know what he has? Don't be afraid. You know when those rants will go away? When we're not afraid. You know when we'll see God's victory? When we're not afraid. You know how that happens? When we realize that Jesus is with us. Let me ask you a question today. What would you do if you knew Jesus was with you? Let's stand for prayer. Father, I have to say I'm probably the most unworthy person to give this message of anybody here. Because as I look at that list, I'm good all the way up until we get to you slandered me and I want to fight you and I'm going to stand up for my rights because I'm a good American. But not such a good Christian. Because I fight, God. I got to fight down. You're calling us today, God, to say, hey, maybe you need to put some of that down. Not to say we don't fight the good fight, but be careful. It's just as important what we do. It's just as important how we do it is what we're doing. And Jesus is coming in and saying, hey, what if you knew I was with you? What would you do then? You know what I think we'd do? Because even in the midst of suffering, if we knew that Jesus was in the boat, if we knew that Jesus was with us, we could do all kinds of things. But I think we stopped believing and we didn't realize what it meant that God is with us, that not just the person that's going through a hard time right now, that God is with you and he won't waste that and he's doing something spectacular and he's going to bring about good. And I pray that can wash over them today. What I really mean is that their joy isn't dependent on their circumstances anymore. That's what it means. I don't have to be afraid that if the good circumstances go away, so does my joy. No, it doesn't, because Jesus is with me. In the good times, in the bad, and in everything else. And I pray today, God, make us that kind of church. That you will build your church here. And that the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So I pray for each person suffering. But I pray that their suffering won't keep them from the mission that you have for them while there is still time. And Lord, we just pray that you receive all the honor, glory, and praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Guys, we'll be here after the service. If there's somebody today, and especially today, maybe you need somebody to pray for you, come up and see us. For everybody else, God bless you. Have a great